the station for news and talk. KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by the Duck Hunter. A 25-year-old transgender woman has been arrested for allegedly stabbing her brother during a family dispute in Lewiston. Serena Frazier was booked Saturday afternoon into the Cache County Jail. Cache County Sheriff's Lieutenant Doyle Peck said deputies were called to a residence near 500 South, 1600 West in Lewiston around 3:10 p.m. The 911 caller had reported a male had been stabbed. When law enforcement arrived at home, they found there had allegedly been an altercation between siblings. During the argument, Frazier had reportedly struck her 29-year-old brother in the head with a cane, causing a significant laceration. Peck said the alleged victim was treated at the scene by paramedics with non-life-threatening injuries. He was later released. Deputies obtained a search warrant for the residence and questioned witnesses. Frazier was taken into custody and later booked on suspicion of aggravated assault, a third-degree felony. Court records show Frazier was previously arrested for misdemeanor criminal mischief in 2020. She later accepted a plea deal that kept her from serving any jail time. According to booking records, Frazier is temporarily being held without bail and will likely be arraigned on formal charges in First District Court Tuesday afternoon. KVNU News Time is 5:06. KVNU weather for tonight. Mostly cloudy, hazy areas of fog, low 10 to 15. Partly cloudy on Tuesday, areas of fog in the morning, haze through the day, high temperature in the mid-20s. It's been to 25. Right now it's 23 at KVNU. KVNU weather is brought to you by LendRight Mortgage, the home of the Freedom Loan. The Freedom Loan covers 100% of your closing costs at the same or lower rates than you'll get from other lenders. Pay zero closing costs. Call LendRight Mortgage, 801-APPROVE, or visit lendrightmortgage.com.
Does your home have that stuffy winter smell? John at the Duck Hunter says it could be your air ducts holding on to dust and other surprises. To get rid of that smell, give John a call at the Duck Hunter. He'll thoroughly clean each duct in every room, not with a shop vac, but with forced air and a vacuum that'll make your mom proud. He can even run a camera through your vents to see what's going on. For a free consultation, call the Duck Hunter at 770-4813.
We are the Duck Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duck Hunter.
KVNU News Time is 5:08. After Logan High School's Test to Stay event concluded, in an email to parents, Logan City School District spokesperson Shauna Longhurst announced that Mount Logan Middle School has scheduled its own Test to Stay event during the school day on Tuesday, tomorrow. The announcement was made after the Logan High School event confirmed 139 additional positive cases out of the 1,162 students that were tested on Thursday, according to Bear River Health Department spokesperson S.D. Hunt. Longhurst said that over the last week, we have seen a surge in COVID cases at Mount Logan Middle School. On Wednesday, Mount Logan Middle School crossed the threshold set by the Utah legislature to consider mitigation efforts to decrease the amount of cases within the school. Although the testing event is scheduled for Tuesday, Governor Cox announced the Test to Stay program would be paused due to the rapid spread of Omicron and widespread availability of vaccines for school-aged children. According to state epidemiologist Dr. Leisha Nolan, during a COVID briefing on Friday morning, said that we're doing it too late, and so Test to Stay really isn't doing what we need it to do. She said we wanted it to stop the spread. It's behind. It's not able to stop the spread. As of now, the testing event is still scheduled, and testing does require registration and parental consent. Parents would have to register their students by the end of the day today on the registration link. Many in areas such as the Uinta Basin have been worried about the future of energy in the state and beyond, but An encouraging announcement came a few weeks ago that Utah was in the running for a very large federal grant. It's for the purpose of meeting the future of energy needs and helping communities transition into that future if necessary. This past week on KVNU's For the People program, Tom Carter, part of the governor's team and a longtime energy advisor, said the overarching goal is to diversify Utah's energy portfolio for economics and resilience,
as well as to provide additional high-paying career opportunities in rural Utah and that leverage existing skills in our energy workforce. And so this challenge, which came from the Economic Development Administration, or EDA, like you said, had a two-phase application, 529 applicants throughout the country. And we put one together that we felt really strongly about.
Utah's application is among the hundreds of applications that were whittled down to 60. Carter said they have 2 months to finalize their total application, but they're working hard to help this region of the state look towards the future.
We can't hope that the status quo will be what it is forever. And so when we look at these communities that have powered not just this state, but the nation, we don't want them to be left behind. We don't want to say thank you for your hard work, thank you for lifting us up and making our modern life possible. We want to be able to say thank you for doing that. Come with us into this new future.
He said the messaging is, let's work together to ensure that your communities don't get left behind. KBNU News Time is 5:11. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Wow, your cars look so shiny.
Thanks. I've been taking them to Green Gorilla Car Wash. Thanks to their new ceramic application, my cars have never had such a glossy shine.
Sounds expensive.
You haven't heard about their sale? Right now, their Jungle membership with ceramic coating is half off for every vehicle. Instead of $30 per month, I'm only paying $14.99 from now until September 2022.
That's almost a whole year.
I know. My half-price membership is good at both Green Gorilla locations in the valley.
I better head there now.
Hi, this is Drew Allen with Allen Mortuaries. Over the years, thousands of families have planned ahead with Allen Mortuaries. Planning ahead helps you make informed and thoughtful decisions. It also spares your family the stress of making these decisions under the pressure of time and strong emotions. Allen Mortuaries' secure pre-need trust plan can save you nearly 40% versus other plans. Keep it simple, safe, and secure. Go with the proven choice, Allen Mortuaries. Voted best funeral home in Cache Valley in northern Utah. Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
We must work through the courts, through legislation, through the ballot. This is what we've been talking about over these last few meetings, the necessity of registering and the necessity of voting. And this is one of the most significant steps that the Negro can take at this hour, going to the ballot box. But I would like to give you a warning signal. I've tried to talk in militant terms for the last few minutes. But in the midst of this militancy, let us always realize that we don't have to hate as we try to straighten this situation out. Let us always realize that we don't have to become bitter as we try to straighten this situation out.
Some words from Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King, of course, celebrated throughout the nation today in what is a national holiday. I like to call it the day that elected officials find the safest, nicest Dr. Martin Luther King quotes to tweet out. And that's been happening throughout Utah here. But Dr. King has always been a fascinating historical character for me for a lot of reasons. One, he was, we have a tendency to deify our historical leaders and perfect them in our memories. But he was a very flawed man. And if you want to read an interesting book about his life and about him as a person, not a lot in the book about his words as an activist and a racial justice leader. A book by Michael Tyson, that he's a scholar at, I think, Harvard, or was at Harvard. Anyway, he's written a series of books on King and his life, and it's controversial, some of his books, because he writes about the flaws. King was a bit of a womanizer, had some issues himself through the years with his own message, and constant debate throughout King's life as an activist and as a preacher, a reverend, to trying to walk a line between forcing change and peacefulness and pacifism. So on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day here in Utah, watching a lot of the conversation, a lot of the discussions, there was a big event held by the NAACP of Salt Lake City yesterday on Capitol Hill with some great quotes from local leaders and some elected officials on hand as well. And I've posted a link to that video on our Facebook page, talking a lot about how much work there still is to do so many years after Martin Luther King Jr. lived. Of course, he was assassinated April 4th, 1968. That was a long time ago. And there are still a lot of things that he fought for that haven't been achieved in that time. And that was the discussion on Capitol Hill yesterday at this event. Again, I've posted the video to that on our Facebook page if you'd like to see it. But coming up, we'll play some highlights from the other fascinating thing about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to me is less about him, I guess, and more about our memories of him and how our elected officials like to sanitize and talk about him, left and right, Republicans and Democrats. King was a radical. One of the quotes that I saw posted by 3 or 4 different Utah lawmakers is a quote where King, it's inspirational, and a lot of what King had to say was, but it's an inspirational quote about, standing firm for your beliefs, roughly. He says, whether what you are standing for is politic, meaning, politically popular at the time, or whether it's culturally popular at the time, sometimes you have to do something just because it's the right thing to do. And that's a great quote. But in the context of the speech he was giving, what he was actually saying in that speech, which was Priorities was the title of the speech, The Power of Priorities, he was saying our priorities are messed up. He was talking about the Vietnam War at the time and how much money that was costing, the loss of life, and what was the point? What was the goal in the first place? And the argument he's making in that speech when he says those words that make a nice wall hanging or bumper sticker today or a T-shirt, what he's saying in that speech, and this is just to highlight the fact that he was a very radical thinker, an activist. He said in that speech, all of that money, all that effort should be going towards things like a universal basic income or federally backed jobs programs for the unemployed or underemployed, or those who had a full-time job but the wages were so low they still couldn't live any quality of life. And so in the context of that speech, he's actually saying something that would be considered very controversial and radical even today. So it's important to remember, I think, all of our historical figures in full context. And I kind of chuckle when I see these quotes shopped around. I always take a second when I see an elected official post a quote from King on usually just this day. That's the tradition, is just this day, and then afterwards forgotten. To find the quote and find the speech and the context of the speech itself, it's illuminating, to say the least, both about the person posting the quote and how little context they understand, but also about King himself. His story is rarely talked about these days, but his life itself was interesting. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929, and he's remembered, of course, as one of the most important and influential civil rights leaders throughout the 50s and 60s, but his life up to then is very interesting. He's the cornerstone of his work, his activism, was based on this nonviolent civil disobedience approach to activism and making change. And he said many times in his writing and his speeches that nonviolent civil disobedience was inspired by his Christian faith and the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He first rose to prominence mid-50s-ish in the Montgomery bus boycott, and he was at that time then selected to take charge of a plan to desegregate the bus services after the activists were able to work that change or force that change. After that, he was actually elected president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and from in that position, he organized civil rights movement actions throughout the South for years. The most famous, of course, in 1963, the March on Washington for Jobs. That part's always forgotten. We know it as the 1963 March on Washington, but it was the March on Washington for Jobs and Rights, or excuse me, Jobs and Freedom. And again, this was, sort of a scrubbed from the memory part of King's activism. It was from the Lincoln Memorial that day during that march, King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech, which that speech itself is often quoted and remembered. But listen to that whole speech sometime if you get a chance. It gives you a full picture of what it was King was talking about and how poorly we remember all of that, even on a day when we're all praising him and talking about what an influential maker of change he was. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, and in 1965 organized the also famous, or infamous, I guess you'd say, Selma to Montgomery marches, that famous incident on a bridge, tragedy on a bridge, that really was a turning point in the passage of civil rights laws. And his influence can't be overstated, to say the least. And, of course, he paid a heavy price. The FBI catching some flack today for a tweet praising Dr. King, but the FBI actually had a surveillance program of Dr. King under J. Edgar Hoover. They believed him to be a threat to the nation, a domestic terrorist. Part of the investigation the FBI launched was trying to tie Dr. King to communism intentionally. Hoover was convinced King wasn't really working for everything he talked about, that he was actually trying to bring communism into the country. And the FBI went so far as to write him a very threatening letter 3 times. First one anonymous, the other 2 not. And one of the FBI's letters actually suggested he commit suicide, something you only see in the craziest of Facebook comment pages these days. Later on in the 60s, King moved into more of a poverty, almost anti-capitalist form of activism, and of course was a vocal anti-Vietnam War activist and speaker. And he launched something called the Poor People's Campaign, fighting for universal basic income, higher wages, and again a federally backed jobs program to put people to work when they were in need on a temporary basis. And then, of course, April 4th, 1968, at age 38, Dr. Martin Luther King was gunned down on that balcony in Memphis, Tennessee. After his death, he was awarded the posthumously Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. And in 1986, President Ronald Reagan signed the legislation enacting Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which actually wasn't celebrated in a handful of states up until a few years ago. That day, though, designated by President Reagan in 86 as the third Monday in January, is a day to remember Dr. King and his birthday. So, on the other side, some of the highlights from Dr. King's actual words that are oftentimes not the most quoted. Celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day here on KVNU's For the People.
When people leave one job for another, they usually take their personal stuff along with them, and yet millions of people still leave their 401k behind. Fortunately, Edward Jones can help you take control of your money. We'll explain your options and, if appropriate, help you roll over your 401k without paying taxes or penalties. To learn more, contact any of the 5 Edward Jones financial advisors in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aids. Once again, you'll be able to hear a loved one's laughter and understand conversations. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Call 753-4327. That's 753-HEAR. Or visit CacheHearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Spending some time here in Hour 2 commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. If you'd like to see the words of some elected leaders here in Utah from today. I've posted links to our Facebook page, some of the tweets, Facebook posts, Instagram posts, and more. Everyone from Governor Cox to our federal representatives to members of the Utah State House and Senate weighing in today with, either their favorite Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quote or something about his life and work that touched them. And I've, again, linked to a lot of that on our Facebook page. Here on the show, though, this has become a tradition. I didn't really plan this. This is what interests me the most. We've made a bit of a tradition here on the show over the years of finding the lesser-known Dr. Martin Luther King stuff to highlight on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And last year, if you remember, we played clips from one of his, again, lesser-known speeches called On Vietnam, in which he remarks on the Vietnam War and the cost of war and imperialism, and kind of lays out his really more radical activist side that people don't like to remember. Again, that we like to kind of scrub from the history, where he calls for things like a universal basic income and a federal jobs program that will put people to work when they're in between jobs, or a plant closes or something like that. These aren't the most remembered things about King, and to me that's interesting with any historical figure, not just King, but any historical figure. The context of the things that aren't as easy to hear or find is sometimes so illuminating and just makes history even more colorful, in my opinion. So I encourage you to do that. As I said earlier, the most famous speech King has is the I Have a Dream speech. And even if this is all you do, go listen to that whole speech. It's long, but listen to the whole speech and understand those I Have a Dream words in the context of the hour-plus setup to that point in the speech, what he's talking about, what he was about. It's just, it's fascinating stuff. And you can really see why this man resonated and why he deservedly is remembered as the civil rights icon that really changed the world, but mostly changed the United States first. Check it out. I've linked to all this on our Facebook page again. A couple of clips from some lesser-known Martin Luther King things and related things here. I wanted to give everybody a chance to hear a bit of this. You can see this. It's actually posted by the Clayton County Library System in Clayton County, Alabama. Georgia. And it's King's Children. It's a video. We won't play the whole thing here, but it's about a 17-minute long video of Dr. Martin Luther King's own children talking about their lives growing up, why they were named what they were named. That's interesting as well. There's a story behind each and every name of his children that meant something to him. But what it was like for them as well, losing their father to, of all things, being gunned down by an assassin. They talk about this in the video, and it's though it's not the words of Martin Luther King Jr. himself, it's also fascinating and a part of the history to hear this, and heartbreaking. So check it out. It's again from the Clayton County Library System. It's on YouTube. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. But here's just a little bit of Dr. Martin Luther King's oldest daughter, Bernice King, reading from a very little known Dr. Martin Luther King essay. This was something he never spoke publicly. It was something he wrote and that the family had, and she read from it in this video posted today.
6 years before the iconic speech at the March on Washington, I was among several civil rights leaders who spoke during the prayer pilgrimage for freedom on May 17, 1957. Before a crowd estimated at between 15,000 and 30,000, I delivered my first national address on the topic of voting rights. I urged America to give us the ballot, which drew strong reviews and positioned me at the forefront of the civil rights leadership. In 1964, I received the Nobel Peace Prize for my unwavering commitment to civil rights, nonviolence. I was 35 years old then, which makes me still the youngest male to ever receive this award. Upon winning the Nobel Peace Prize, I was granted a prize up to $54,000 that poured back into the civil rights movement.
That, again, just a sample of this 17-minute long, I think, video posted by the Clayton County Library System today with Dr. King's own children reading some of his writing, some of the things that he never spoke publicly, things that weren't a part of his public speeches or rallies and things like that, but instead things he wrote that the family had copies of. And that was a bit of news to me, that $54,000 for the Nobel Peace Prize, which then was a lot more than it would be now. And King putting that right back into these groups that were continuing the civil rights movement and continued it after his assassination as well. So that was news to me. But the whole thing, I've linked to it on our Facebook page. And finally, as I said, tradition here on For the People on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, because to me he's one of the most fascinating figures in modern history, and complicated figures as well. And again, it's always striking to me that so much of what he talked about and what he fought for, we really still haven't quite gotten there yet in this country. It's been a lengthy process. I'd like to find a speech that most people haven't heard. Last year, we went with his On Vietnam speech. Not one of his more popular speeches. In fact, it's one that most people have tried to scrub from history. This one today and this year on Martin Luther King Jr. Day here on the show, not an unpopular speech. It's just one that for some reason didn't get a lot of play, but I think it's honestly one of his more powerful speeches. It was delivered June 17th, 1966 at a rally in Memphis, and it wasn't a planned rally, but Dr. King was asked to speak as crowds gathered in the streets after a local event that had made headlines, had angered a lot of communities, some injustice that they wanted spotlight on. And so King, being near town, was asked to speak and didn't really have anything ready, so he wrote this. It's called, this is not the entirety of it, it's about 30 minutes long if you'd like to see the whole thing, but here's just a few minutes of King's June 17th, 1966 speech, impromptu almost, called All Here and Now.
We don't need to utter but 3 words to tell this nation what we are talking about. They aren't big words. You don't need to have a great vocabulary to utter them. You don't need to have a philosophical bent to grasp them. They are 3 little words. But we want to let the world know that these words describe what we mean and what we are determined to do about racial injustice. One is the word all. We don't want some of our rights. We don't want a few token handouts here and there. We want all of our rights. The other word is here. There are some people who say that we need to go back to Africa. And then there are some others who tell Negroes in the South to leave the South. You can't be free, so get out. But down in Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and South Carolina, we are saying something else now. We want all of our rights, and we want all of our rights here in Alabama and Mississippi and South Carolina. And then there's a third word. It is the word now. We are not willing to wait 100 years for our rights. We are not willing to wait 50 years for what is ours on the basis of the Constitution of this United States and the authority of God Himself. No, we are not willing to wait another 25 years for our rights. We can hear voices telling us to slow up. We can hear voices telling us to cool off. Our only answer in calm, patient terms must be that we have cooled off too long, and if we keep cooling off, we'll end up in a deep freeze. We must go on and say, no, what we are saying to this nation is that we want all of our rights. We want them here, and we want all of them not next year, not next week, but we want them now, at this hour. This is what we are saying.
Again, just a lesser known bit of work from Martin Luther King Jr. there. Dr. King giving that address titled All Here and Now on June 17th, 1966. And again, the background on those remarks, you can see the whole thing, about a 30-minute long speech, is that it was almost an impromptu speech. He wasn't expecting to or hadn't been asked to speak yet, and then various coincidences, they said, "Can you speak?" And he threw that together from notes on a larger speech he eventually completed a year later, or later that year. He gave that speech at a smaller rally. He was accustomed to large stadium-sized rallies at that point, and it was a smaller rally of people basically standing in the street when he gave that speech. And again, not one of his more well-known comments. But all here and now, I've linked to it on our Facebook page, and that will do it for our commemoration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Again, if you'd like to see what Utah lawmakers and the governor had to say in their own remarks today regarding Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the change he made in this country, I've linked to some of their reactions, tweets, and even a speech the governor gave on Capitol Hill on our Facebook page at facebook.com/KVNUFTP. And we'll be back with more of For the People right after this look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:36, and the news is brought to you by Northern Steel Building. Intermountain Healthcare officials said Saturday they are temporarily tightening visitor guidelines. Officials cited increasing patient volumes and the prevalence of the Omicron variant as reasons for the policy update. KUTV reports changes included allowing overnight visitors for only pediatric patients, laboring and postpartum mothers, and patients who are suffering from dementia or are critically ill or at end of life. Visiting hours are between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m., which officials said avoids visitors removing their mask while sleeping, which increases possible exposure to caregivers. They said the changes will go into effect at hospitals and clinics tomorrow. Intermountain Healthcare said on social media this will help further protect caregivers, keep patients safe, and help reduce the spread of COVID-19. They noted all visitors must wear a face mask at all times in all areas in hospitals and clinics, including private patient rooms. Officials added that when feasible, patients should have their masks on in the presence of a caregiver. A driver is in custody after an attempt to evade a routine traffic stop ended with them crashing into the water Sunday morning. According to the Tooele County Sheriff's Office, the incident began around 8:15 a.m. when a deputy attempted to pull over a white Toyota Tacoma pickup truck for failing to yield to traffic. Fox 13 reports the driver of the vehicle did not pull over and attempted to flee. The deputy did not pursue, but was able to observe the vehicle as it drove along I-80 prior to the driver crashing into the water just off SR 36. After crews were able to pull the vehicle out of the water, the driver was taken into custody. Although they experienced minimal injuries due to the temperature of the water, they were transported to a local hospital as a safety precaution. And 4 people were transported to the hospital early Sunday after a wrong-way crash in Salt Lake County, authorities said. According to the Highway Patrol, this happened just before 3 a.m. on northbound I-215 at approximately 600 South near the I-80 interchange. KUTV reports when troopers arrived, they found a passenger vehicle with 2 individuals inside that had been driving southbound in the northbound lanes. It had collided head-on with a semi-truck and spun off the freeway. Neither occupant was wearing a seatbelt, according to a statement from the Utah Department of Public Safety. The driver was taken to the hospital in fair condition, and the passenger was transported in extremely critical condition. The semi-truck caught fire and became fully engulfed. 2 people were in the truck at the time, but were able to escape the flame. They were transported to the hospital in good condition. Officials are investigating impairment as a possible cause of the crash. KBNU News Time is 5:39.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work, or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
KBNU weather tonight, mostly cloudy, hazy, areas of fog, low 10 to 15, and then partly cloudy tomorrow, areas of morning fog, haze through the day, high temperature in the mid-20s. And it looks like pretty much everything continuing along in this manner until Thursday night. Things will be changing with a chance of snow Thursday night and then a chance of snow at least on Friday morning. But 25 has been our high. It's 22 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Wheatland Seed. With higher fertilizer prices and drought conditions, 2022 will be challenging. So lower your input costs during Wheatland Seed's preseason sale. All oats, barley, cover crops, and alfalfa will be priced below last year's prices. Visit wheatlandseed.com for more information. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
I'm Larry Gelwigs, the getaway guru for Morris Columbus Travel and Norwegian Cruise Line. Cruising is back with free airfare for the second guest, 30% off your cruise fare, and on select cruises, the third, fourth, and fifth guests sharing your cabin sail free. Just pay the taxes. That's free air, free cruises, and 30% off. For the best travel deals on the planet, call Morris Columbus Travel.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. The latest on the follow-ups to the Texas synagogue hostage incident. Also, the East Coast cleans up from another visit by Old Man Winter. Plus, why the supply chain is still problematic after all these months. The clues about the coronavirus that can be found in our sewage. And how inflation is holding back our spending plans. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
There must be some kind of way out of here. Say the joker to the thief. There's too much confusion.
Welcome back to KBNU's For the People. They joined us here on the show a couple of weeks ago. My memory's so bad. But the point-in-time survey gets underway this week. It's actually planned for the early morning hours of next week, Wednesday, January 26th, and Thursday, January 27th. And this week, they're still asking for volunteers. This is not an easy thing to do. They begin counting around 3 a.m. and go until 6 a.m. So starting at 3 a.m. Wednesday, January 27th, or early morning Thursday, January 27th, they will be counting up until 6 a.m. And then there's a second night where they go back and do some follow-up stuff if they can, and also complete a count. So they need volunteers for this. This is a mandated count. This comes through the federal government and then the state. And we spoke with Jess Lucero, who's on a volunteer basis heading up the point-in-time survey this year. She told us here in the studio that the goal of this is to get a snapshot of homelessness in Cache Valley. When this was done last year, well, it's done every year, but 2 years ago, I think it was, the story came out in 2020 that when they did this point-in-time survey, they found a surprisingly large number of families in Cache Valley homeless, living in a car or a van for various periods of time, or a relative's couch, even families with children. And some of the reasons range from, the unexpected loss of a job. One family, one of the adults had lost a job. I'm trying to remember. I believe she'd lost her job, and her husband had been in a car accident, and all this had happened within 3 months of each other. And so they basically suddenly had very little income to work with after doing okay for years, and they found themselves homeless for a long period of time. We don't think it happens in Cache Valley because we don't see a lot of what you'd see in downtown Salt Lake or even 25th Street in Ogden on a Saturday night. A lot of panhandling and things like that in those areas. We don't see a lot of that, and so I think most of us believe it's not a problem here. But again, the point-in-time survey each and every year has revealed not only is it a problem here, it's a growing problem here. So Jess told us it's really important this year that they get out and do this survey as fully as possible, and that's going to require volunteers. So they're asking anyone who'd be willing to give up likely a night of sleep starting at 3 a.m. until 6 a.m. the morning of Thursday, January 27th. And then there will be some training, I believe, Wednesday, January 26th is what she told us. They're asking anyone who can to step up. So you can do that a bunch of different ways. You can reach out to the Bear River Association of Governments, BRAG, on their website. They have a couple of links there. You can also get in touch with David Zook in the county, specifically Cache County Executive David Zook and former Utah Senate President Wayne Niederhauser, who happens to be my favorite former Senate President. Really fun guy and a transparency lover. They were named the state's homeless service director, or Niederhauser was named the state's homeless service director. And he asked Cache County Executive David Zook if he would be the government official to lead the Northern Utah local group. And so that is an ongoing work. Zook said his first impression after their very first point-in-time survey a few years ago was this is a much bigger problem in the valley than anyone thought. And so they're hoping to get a broader snapshot and understand better how all this is working and some of the causes as well of homelessness here in Cache Valley. So if you're interested and, again, willing to give up a night of sleep, there are a lot of different ways you can do this. The information is available in the CacheValleyDaily.com story that I've also linked to on our Facebook page, but you can just reach out to our friend Jess, who was here in the studio last week, Jessica Lucero at usu.edu, or Janine Thompson, which is JAYNINET at brag.gov, the Bear River Association of Governments.gov. Both those email addresses, again, are in the story by Rod Boehm at CacheValleyDaily.com, and looking for volunteers still in need as they head into just a week out on this point-in-time homeless survey. So check that out again. That's at CacheValleyDaily.com, and I've linked to it on our Facebook page. Other Cache Valley news, this has been a long time in the works, and over the years has been a source of controversy, spats between different nonprofits and city officials at times. And, well, it's finally all coming to a close. The county animal impound facility will open in May of 2022. This is a long-running project. The facility is currently under construction, but they expect it will be completed and open by mid-ish May of 2022. And the idea behind this is that this has been the reason this has been a lengthy project. There was a kink in all of this thrown in by shortages and costs of construction materials. So that threw a major kink in things. But prior to that, there was a lengthy discussion about, would Logan City maybe go their own way? Could something be worked out with, the Cache Humane Society? Cache Humane was in a situation where they're maxed out at times. And so they were basically in a situation where they needed more than the city had to offer to continue to offer services. Remember, Cache Humane Society is a nonprofit, no-kill facility. And they were saying, look, we are stretched so thin already. And so then there was suggestion that maybe Logan City would just go it alone. And they did a bit, at least with some of the spay and neuter clinics ongoing through the city directly. But this is an official impound facility for the county for the first time ever in the valley. And this comes after Cache County Council members unanimously greenlit this in last year, May of 2021. About $3.2 million was set aside for that. And again, construction costs threw that off wildly. This is hitting everybody, but the idea behind this is the new facility will shelter animals impounded by local city and county officials, and they're hoping that this 11,000 square foot county impound facility will allow basically better services on all this. Will allow for the impound and care of animals, but also getting animals back to their owners, and providing even maybe some opportunities for volunteers from veterinary services around the valley to participate in the several programs that will run through this impound facility, working hand-in-hand with USU and Bridgeland Technical College. So, and those services, according to the statement that we received, will include adoption services, medical treatment, emergency care, hands-on instruction for veterinarians, technicians, students, and interns. So this is a pretty robust program through something called the New Vision Veterinary Group, and they're going to be involved directly with this new impound facility when it opens. So, in a perfect world, we wouldn't need anything like this, but also not every loose dog or stray cat is the result of a neglectful owner. Many are, unfortunately, or people that just don't know how to, care properly for an animal. But tip one, collars out, harnesses in. That's the easiest way to lose a dog, is when they slip that collar. It's also really bad for them to be stretching on a collar. Put them in a harness. Little things like that can make a huge difference, but also sometimes they bolt. I've had that happen to me in my lifetime, and had to go track a dog down. So in a perfect world, we wouldn't need anything like this, but the need has outgrown the resources. Again, as Cache Humane brought the subject up, they're just spread too thin to meet the need that the county and Logan City had, without a huge additional amount of money the city didn't have or didn't want to spend. So a couple of years of talk, and this is what we get in the end. Again, it was approved by the county council May of 2021, expected to be done a lot sooner than now, but costs and delays in construction equipment or construction supplies have pushed things back. But an official open date announced on this from the county today, May 19th of 2022, Cache County's new animal impound facility with a lot of services included, adoption, emergency care, and more, will be up and running. So that's very cool. Check it out. A link to the story at CacheValleyDaily.com is on our Facebook page, and we'll be back right after this.
Beaver Mountain will be having 5 public nights for skiing and snowboarding during the month of January. Little Beaver Lift will be open from 5 to 9 p.m. Ski and snowboard rentals will be available, as well as first-time beginner lessons. Age requirements apply. The cafe will also be open each night. Go to skithebeav.com for the dates, info, and to purchase tickets. Limited number of tickets are available and must be purchased in advance online. No tickets will be sold at the mountain for public nights. Call 753-0921 for any questions. Come on up and ski the Beav.
Advanced Heating and AC, the gold medal winner in the Best of Northern Utah, is teaming up with Carrier Heating and Cooling. Carrier provides you with the best furnace units available. And now is the best time to buy a new unit before the weather turns Cache Valley cold. Financing options are available. Turn to the experts at Advanced Heating and AC and Carrier. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning at 752-7272. Stop by their showroom west of DI. Online, advancedheating-ac.com.
It's the winter weekend everyone loves, Bear Lake's Monster Winterfest. January 21st through the 23rd. Go to bearlake.org for details on events, plus hotel and lodging deals. Come up for a weekend of food and tons of fun as hundreds of people brave the icy cold waters of Bear Lake for the Monster Polar Plunge. There's a chili cook-off, cardboard boat regatta, fun run, and Cisco Disco fishing tournament. Go to bearlake.org for all the info and lodging specials. The Monster Winterfest, January 21st through the 23rd in Bear Lake.
Tuesday edition Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show will dive into the Democrats' ongoing battle to change the rules in the Senate with the filibuster and voting rights bill. on the docket. Plus, Buck, what else?
We've got the new Attorney General for the state of Virginia joining to talk about how he's going to help bring down crime in that state. It's a lesson perhaps for other states that are struggling. We'll get to that and more coming up on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Wow, flashback. Welcome back to
Yeah, it's just we're getting new songs just filtering in.
I like that.
Without even trying.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Back to the legislature for just a second. Again, this kicks off tomorrow morning, and I forgot to mention this. Meant to bring it up right as we started today, but Senator Chris Wilson is asking residents of Cache Valley, except for those in the southern part of the valley, roughly 3,200 south in Nibley on south. You're in Senator Scott Sandals' district, and I don't think he's surveying. But Senator Chris Wilson, for everyone north of that area in Nibley and Cache Valley, you're in Senator Wilson's Senate district, and he has sent out a priority survey, I guess you'd call it, ahead of the legislative session. So the survey will close, I don't know when, sometime tonight, maybe midnight. I don't know if it's automatic or if he'll shut it off tomorrow morning. But he said he's basically taking survey responses until the session begins, which it kicks off. The committee meetings start at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So I'm not sure when the window will close on this, but I just checked, and you're still able to take the survey through the link he supplied us at cachevalleydaily.com. You can click on that link and basically answer some questions about budget priorities, what's most important to you. It asks you to rank several things lawmakers have already announced they're going to consider when it comes to taxes. But I think the goal of this is to basically get some idea of where. So taxes are going to come up. That is absolutely a known. I mean, it will be no surprise whatsoever. So the question is, how? What is the priority? So, for example, one of the questions Senator Wilson asks, he asks respondents to rank their preference on different tax cut options. The Senate President has already said there will be a tax cut. Well, what the Senate President already said, because he's hokey and likes to sloganize things, he said this will be another year of tax cuts. He called 2021 the year of tax cuts. The tax cut in 2021, by the way, was $100 million out of the state budget that will go to tax cuts for folks on Social Security and veterans in some situations. This year, this is where it gets interesting. So we have 3 competing income tax cut proposals. On top of that, we've got the sales tax on food removal bill. It will take the state's portion of that sales tax on food away, except on candy, as we discussed in hour 1. That will be up for debate. And then there are these 3 competing income tax cut proposals. One would reduce the income tax from its current 4.95 to 4.90. So a 0.05% reduction in income tax. Another suggests we reduce the income tax in Utah. This is, again, the state-collected portion of that income tax withdrawal you see on your paycheck stubs. They would reduce the state income tax to, in the second proposal, 4.75. And then a third proposal suggests we reduce the state income tax rate to 4.6. And I have no idea which one of those is more likely or less likely. I know that lawmakers are dealing with surpluses and rosy revenue pictures right now, so they're going to be inclined to reduce the state's revenue as much as possible because, of course, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense. These things are obviously done for political reasons. They're done to make them popular, But they also happen to be things that I think the majority of people in Utah would like to see happen. Whether the majority of Utahns care, whether it's 4.6 or 4.75, 4.95 to 4.90 seems almost like an insult. That 0.05% reduction in income tax, that's going to be like $20 for the average Utahn. I don't think we should let them pat themselves on the back for that one if they're going to do it at all. There is a counter-argument that they shouldn't do it at all, that we're underfunding so many things in the state that maybe it's time to invest in our own services in our own state. That argument is getting a lot of traction as well in majority caucus circles. So we'll see what happens, but Senator Wilson wants to know what your priorities are when it comes to taxes and tax cuts. That survey linked in the story at CashValleyDaily.com. I've also linked to it on our Facebook page. Dave Ramsey is next here on KVNU Logan.